Welcome back to Crystals and Codes. I'm so glad you're here today because what we're going to explore together is something every single one of us has experienced, and something that, when we really sit with, has the power to change everything about how we move through this world. We're talking about pain, not in a heavy, hopeless way, but in the way that a great teacher might hand you a difficult lesson, trusting that you are capable of rising to meet it. Today we're going to look at pain as a catalyst, a spark, a doorway, an invitation, and we're going to draw from a truly beautiful passage from the raw material, also known as the Law of One. Let's read it together first, and then we'll break it down. Questioner: can you give me examples of catalytic action beginning with the self-unmanifested, producing learning catalyst? Ra: I am Ra. We observed your interest in the catalyst of pain. This experience is most common among your entities. The pain may be of the physical complex. More often, it is of the mental and emotional complex. In some few cases, the pain is spiritual in complex nature. This creates a potential for learning. The lessons to be learned vary. Almost always, these lessons include patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Very often, the catalyst for emotional pain, whether it be the death of the physical complex of one other self which is loved or other seeming loss, will simply result in the opposite. In a bitterness and impatience, a souring. This is catalyst which has gone awry. In these cases, then, there will be additional catalyst provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self as all-sufficient creator, containing all that there is and full of joy. All right. Let's take a moment to reflect on that. Ra is telling us that pain, the kind we feel in our bodies, the kind that wakes us up at 3 a.m., the kind that settles into our chest after a loss, is one of the most universal experiences we have as human beings. And rather than being something that simply happens to us, it is being offered to us as a catalyst. A catalyst, in chemistry, is something that sparks a reaction. It doesn't create the outcome on its own, it just makes the transformation possible. That's a really important distinction. Pain doesn't automatically make us wiser, more compassionate, or more at peace. But it can. It holds that potential, like a seed. What we do with it determines whether that seed may grow into something usable, or whether it just sits there, or worse, decays. Physical, emotional, and spiritual pain. Ra breaks pain down into 3 layers, and I think this is important because it mirrors a lot of what we already know intuitively. There's physical pain, the kind your body sends you when something needs attention. A chronic illness, an injury, a body that is simply asking you to slow down. How many of us have only learned the art of rest because our bodies made us? Physical pain has a way of stripping away every distraction and bringing us back into the present moment. In that stillness, something can open up. Then there's emotional and mental pain. And Ra says, this is actually the more common kind of catalyst, which seems rather accurate indeed when we consider what the majority of the world seems to be composed of. The grief, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the feeling of being misunderstood or unseen. These are the pains that live quietly inside us, sometimes for years. And they are extraordinary teachers, if we're willing to learn from them. Then, rarer but profound, there's spiritual pain. That dark night of the soul, when your beliefs feel shattered, when meaning seems out of reach, when you're asking the deepest questions of your existence and the silence feels deafening. Many of the most spiritually awakened souls you'll ever meet have walked through exactly that kind of darkness. The 3 lessons: patience, tolerance, and the light touch. Ra tells us that almost always, the lessons embedded in pain come back to 3 things: patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Let's think about what that really means in everyday life. Patience. Pain teaches us that not everything resolves quickly. Healing takes time. Growth takes time. When you're in the middle of something hard, the ego wants it to be over. But pain asks you to sit with discomfort, to trust the process, to release your grip on the timeline. That is a profound spiritual practice. Tolerance. When you have suffered, you develop a capacity for empathy that you simply cannot manufacture any other way. You begin to understand, on a cellular level, that everyone around you is carrying something. That difficult person in your life? They are in pain too. Tolerance, true tolerance, is born from the recognition of our shared vulnerability. The light touch. This one is so beautiful to me. A light touch means learning not to force, not to grasp, not to hold so tightly to outcomes, to people, to the way things should be. Pain has a way of showing us how exhausting it is to clench, and slowly, gently, it can teach us to open our hands. When the catalyst goes awry. Now here is the part of this passage that I find the most tender and the most honest. Ra acknowledges that very often, especially in cases of deep loss, like losing someone we love, the catalyst doesn't produce those lessons. Instead, it produces the opposite: bitterness, impatience, a souring of the spirit. And I want to be really gentle here, because if you've ever felt that, if grief has ever hardened something inside you, if a loss has left you angry at the world or at the universe or at whatever you believe in, that is not a failure. That is human. That is real. What Ra is pointing to is simply that when pain closes us rather than opens us, the journey isn't over. The universe, in its extraordinary patience and love, will offer us more opportunities, more moments, more relationships, more experiences that gently, or sometimes not so gently, circle back around to offer us the same lesson in a new form. Isn't it so hopeful to remember that nothing is wasted? To know that there is no experience that is abandoned, and that you are never left without another door? The invitation, whenever we feel ready, and we each get to decide when that is to look at the pain and ask, is there anything this is trying to show me? Is there something I might learn here about patience, or tolerance, or holding things more gently? None of this is to imply one will continuously feel pain if they do not act upon it in a learning way. None of this is to imply pain is a necessary cause and/or necessary fault of a person requiring the learning of a lesson. Each individual person has each their own individual journey and lessons. There are infinite and endless variations to what we each choose to experience. Pain is not the enemy of your spiritual journey. For many people, in many ways, it is a part of the journey. In the formation of diamonds, the catalyst leading to their creation is pressure. What is the catalyst leading to the creation of you? You are not broken because you have hurt. You are human. And within that humanity lives every possibility for growth, for compassion, for joy. Thank you so much for being here today. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, be gentle with yourself. With so much love, I'll see you next time on Crystals and Codes.